Today, we are pleased to have retired SOR rep and guest presenter Mike Miller join us. Mike spent most of his 46 years as a manufacturer sales representative and definitely knows how to sell pressure and mechanical level switches. Mike knows SOR very well. He began his career at SOR in 1972 before founding M&D Controls in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1978. He is always a delight to listen to, and a lot can be learned from Mike. And now it is my pleasure to hand it over to Mike Miller.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for that awesome introduction, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about SOR mechanical level and pressure products. I hope that in these 45 minutes I'll be able to offer some tips in the session for how to sell these products. Everyone sells differently, but maybe something I offer will be a benefit to those who are part of the session. So let's get started. You know, when I began to do presentations on SOR products or on any products, a lot of times I'd offer a card trick or a magic trick to get the audience loosened up. It's not good to do that on Zoom, so we'll skip the card trick. But usually I did that to try to figure out who was lucky and who was good. And the end result of the offer was that we decided it's good to be both lucky and skilled. So let's look at the methods I used to sell SOR during my roughly 48 years with these products and see if they can be of any use to enhance your skills in selling SOR. You know, when I worked at SOR in the early 70s, I did field service work and return analysis, customer application support, new and old product design and redesign. And when I graduated from college, I had no inkling I'd ever be interested in a career in sales. In fact, I would have told you there was no way I'd ever do sales. But as I spoke to customers about applications, and as reps took me on sales calls during or after a field service call with hopefully satisfactory resolution, I found that I really enjoyed interacting with customers and the satisfaction of winning a sale. So when the opportunity arose to become a rep for SOR, I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to support myself or my family as a salesperson. But I began to notice that when salespeople came to call on me to sell me a product, if I read the literature before they came, a lot of times I felt like I knew more about their products than they did. So I began to reason that surely if they could make a living not knowing any more about their products than that, I could make a living by selling a product that I knew well. So let's see what I did. The first thing I'd like to say is that product confidence is essential. A good technical salesperson knows their product very well, or they know someone else who knows the product really well and who's accessible. Product confidence is as visible to a customer as a forehead tattoo. It is really obvious. So I gained a hands-on knowledge of these products by reading the literature, practicing with the demos, doing focused selling, sometimes selling the same product for a full week or maybe even a whole month, until I felt like I'd heard every question and could answer every question. I unashamedly copied presentations from product experts, and I learned by helping to fix or solve customers' problems with these products. So the process of learning a product well and discussing it with customers leads to an additional benefit, which is application knowledge. So knowing where a customer needs a product and touching on these needs or the benefits of using your product in an application where I know we work better than anyone else pretty quickly gives the customer a sense that you are or you could be a valuable asset in their career and that time spent with you is a good investment. So like a good football coach who has a series of plays that always work, we can begin to look at our customer base and start to filter through opportunities and guide customers to sure wins that help them and make us look good. As this occurs more frequently and over an increasingly broad range of customers, we find another benefit, and that is that our ability to communicate to customers and principals gets better and better. Well, we know our rep is in the business of selling. We sell ourselves to customers, to our principals, to our managers, and to fellow reps. And like a good marriage, this is enhanced by frequent and open and honest communications, including listening without bias. If you look at this triangle, a lot of people read it to say, I love Paris in the springtime. But if you read it carefully, it actually says, I love Paris in the springtime. It's hard to read or hear something without overcoming the bias that we have in what we expect to read or to hear. So we need to be careful about that. We need to obey all the rules, respond immediately when we're contacted by a customer, even if we can't fulfill the request right away. Customers like to know that you understand their needs and that we're doing everything reasonably possible to help them. And principals like to know that you're trying to sell $1 million of their product, even if your results don't seem to show that. I found that a good opinion of your efforts to perform can forestall some pretty uncomfortable situations, sometimes by quite a long time. Sometimes you'll find that you're in over your head, and then if you've been good at communicating needs and opportunities and issues and desires, bringing in a product expert can be a great solution, and they're willing to do that for us. I learned from time spent with these persons, and I can honestly promote those people to my customers as a valued resource that they'll be glad they spent their time with. We're really very lucky to live in an age when we can access people in so many ways. And that brings us to the fourth tip. Time is increasingly valuable for us, for our customers, and our principals. We need to know how to reach our experts. We need to pre-arrange for them to be available for their support when the opportunities justify their involvement. And we need to become proficient at merging phone calls, FaceTiming to show live situations, Zooming multiple locations for meetings, doing online model demonstrations, or using animation videos, using devices with displays or projections that our audience can easily see. We need to invest in technology that enhances our productivity, and we need to take the time early to confirm rooms, demos, meals, audiovisual support, and attendees. Customers and principals love to deal with reps who are both professional and proficient. So, all the tips and reminders in the world aren't useful if they don't work for you. So let me demonstrate how I used to sell these products. When I wanted to introduce a new or an old SOR product to a new or old customer, I found that reviewing the SOR product line using the SOR product guide was an excellent way to remind the customer of all the products that SOR manufactures, and possibly touch on a need that they had that I might not know about. So let's start with a review the way that I would do it. I would begin by saying, SOR is probably best known for manufacturing pressure switches. We've been doing that for over 50 years. We make pressure switches with adjustable ranges from 30 inches of vacuum up through 7,000 pounds in various configurations. We offer weather-tight, explosion-proof, hermetically sealed switches. We offer European-style switches with separate access to set point adjustment without disturbing the electrical enclosures. We offer the mini hermet pressure switches, which are environmentally sealed as well as explosion-proof. We offer dual set point models or models with wide adjustable deadbands in weatherproof and explosion-proof versions. We make the sub-minis for use in areas where you don't have a lot of space. And we make the 805 series solid-state pressure switch products. We do differential pressure switches with single pistons in all the same ranges of configurations. We do the regular pressure switches. And we also do differential pressure switches with dual pistons in applications where you need a lot of capability for material compatibility with aggressive media. The 102 and 103 series switches allow us to detect low differentials at high working pressures. And the 107 switches allow us to detect very low differentials at low working pressures. The 800, the 805 and 815 series transmitters are a very economical and versatile pressure transmitter in an all-stainless steel construction with hermetically sealed innards. The 815s are a very useful combination product that give us the ability to communicate via HART, Modbus, or 4 to 20, and also offer a 1 to 5 volt low power communication opportunity. And we do differential pressure and submersible pressure. We do temperature switches in the same styles that we do pressure switches. And we do RTDs, thermocouples, thermal wells, temperature sensing assemblies and accessories where electronic temperature measurement is useful. We do level measurement using submersible transmitters measuring head pressure. We do electronic differential pressure for level, RF capacitance, magnetically coupled floats, and then we also offer some accessory items like flushing rings. We do mechanical level, doing floats and displacers in flange chambers or sealed chambers, using top-mounted floats and displacers or side-mounted floats. We do high-pressure floats, low-cost economical side-mounted floats with reed switches or heavier-duty models with micro switches, and also ultrasonic level switches with single or dual set points, and RF level switches with single or multiple set points. SOR is one of the few companies, if maybe not the only company in the US, that still does nuclear qualified pressure and temperature switches, giving you an idea of how robust their manufacturing and documentation process is. And we do flow switches using thermal differential, mechanical paddles, and electronic differential pressure. Additionally, we do sampling systems for a wide variety of sampling applications. SOR makes switches with approvals from all over the world. We do a lot more approvals than are what are shown here. So if you have an application that requires an approval, just ask, and there's a chance that we can handle it. So I've always thought that the story behind the origin of SOR was very interesting. As I heard it, Roy Dunlap, one of the founders of SOR, came home from the war and wanted to start a business. So he joined with two other partners to form Mechny Arts, which was an engraving and machine shop. For years, they were a small business doing odd jobs, producing aircraft hot meal boxes and bayonet trays and casino dice. Then one year, Ben Brown from Phillips Pipeline came to Mr. Dunlap and told him he had an idea for a better pressure switch, and that if Mechny Arts would build it, that Phillips Pipeline would buy it. So Roy agreed to build it, and Static O-Ring Pressure Switch Company, division of Mechny Arts Inc., was formed, and soon it overshadowed Mechny Arts. Roy traveled all over the country for years displaying the product and explaining its revolutionary design. Eventually hired Ross Johnson as sales manager, who set up a rep organization, and with among us, with 35 to 45% commissions, 2-week standard deliveries, and free 24-hour delivery, the product took off. And today, SOR is a multi-million-dollar company with international sales and manufacturing. So I started most of my presentations, my first visits with customers, with the SOR cutaway. And I thought we'd take a look at that. The cutaway it helps show what makes this such a great product. The early pressure switches, the ones we competed with, from other manufacturers, used board-on tubes, sealed pistons, and diaphragms as sensors. So these force motion devices, which are made by Mercoid and Barksdale and Square D and Penn and some others, had some pretty serious limitations. With the introduction of the SOR pressure switch, we're able to overcome some of those drawbacks, make a long-lived, rugged pressure switch that was really well suited for applications that cause problems for some of our competitors. So let's look at that. In the cutaway, you can see that the fluid pressure operates against this diaphragm. The fluids contact only the pressure port, the O-ring, and the diaphragm, 3 very simple parts which are easy to make from any material we need to be compatible with the process fluids. So you almost never need a diaphragm seal on an SOR switch. The force of the pressure of the fluid is transferred to the head of the piston through the diaphragm, and that piston is biased by the spring. When the pressure of the fluid overcomes the spring force, the piston moves forward about 0.005 of an inch, and that piston moves forward and operates the micro switch back here behind the adjusting nut. If the pressure continues to rise, the piston moves forward and bottoms inside of this cylinder disc. And you see that cylinder disc is seated on a body on a shoulder in the body of the switch. So everything's mechanically stopped. That means that we can take a very high overpressure without doing any damage to the switch. If you have a cutaway, you'll see that the range on most cutaways that we show are 6 to 30 pounds of pressure, but the overpressure rating is 1,500 pounds. And the proof pressure, which is the pressure we can contain without any loss of sealing integrity is 2,500 pounds. So it means that we have the ability to detect low pressures without being concerned about the normal high operating pressure of the system. So if your accuracy is a half to 1% of your range, it means we can choose a range that's small enough to give us the very best possible accuracy we need for loss of pressure set points or permissive start pressure set points without having to have a switch that covers the entire range that the pressure switch is going to be exposed to. I'd recommend, if you're doing presentations, that you utilize SOR's resources, the YouTube videos that explain the cutaway and construction of the switch on the SOR, the static O-ring principle. You know, you need to be aware of the basics of the switch. We don't have time today to talk about single pull double throw or double pull double throw or NEMA ratings, dead bands and manual resets and dual set points, but you need to understand those. So you have to study through the catalog and begin to know what those terms mean. The model number system can be daunting at first, but once you understand it, it's great. You can read a model number system and understand just by looking at the model number everything that's in the switch, so you know how the switch has been made. And it means that if you're working with some difficult applications, you can choose every component to make the switch suitable for the service it's going to be used in. After I've shown the customer the cutaway, usually my second visit is with the mini Hermet pressure switch. It's really a great follow-up demo. When I was working at SOR, I did their field service and return analysis. And I found that of the switches that came back to us at SOR, probably 80 to 90% of them that came back didn't fail because there was some mechanical problem in the switch. They failed because water got into the inside of the switch and corroded it or clogged it up. So the mini Hermet was the switch that we built to solve that problem. If you look at this, you can see that there's an O-ring under the pressure port right there. You can't see it here, but there's a gasket under the set point adjustment there. And there's an O-ring that sets in this groove right here. So all the entry to the inside of the switch is sealed. So the switch is environmentally sealed. Moisture cannot get in or out of the switch. Also, if you look at the seals in the switch, we've got the O-ring, which seals against the process there. We have back here in the capsule where the hermetically sealed switch is, the welded metal diaphragm that transfers motion. We've got epoxy potting compound over the micro switch here. We've got the glass to metal seal embedded in here, and then epoxy potting compound and the conduit connection to a depth that meets the requirements of the National Electric Code for factory sealed leads. So you've got 5 seals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that prevent migration of any liquids, water or leaking process fluids into the conduit. So the SOR switches are really very rugged and very reliable. So what are some applications where we excel? For the pipeline industry, we solved a lot of problems. On pumps, the suction pressure at the inlet and the second and third stage inlets all have to be maintained above a minimum pressure in order to maintain a maximum pressure at the discharge. So we have the perfect design for loss of suction pressure detection. If we look at this example of a 3-stage compressor, you can see that when your gases come in from the process, you go through a gas and liquid knockout. So your free liquids are knocked out here and your gases come out and come into the suction side of the first stage compressor. You go through the compressor and discharge, go into a heat exchanger to take out the heat of compression, and go into another liquid knockout after that cooler to knock out the condensed liquids. Take the dry gases over and into the second stage inlet, out the second stage discharge through another heat exchanger to take out the heat of compression, knock out some more liquids, take the dry gases into the third stage inlet, out through another heat exchanger, out through another liquid knockout to drop out the final liquids and take the clean, dry, and high pressure gases off to sales or process use. So you can see that just on this single compressor, there are a number of applications for SOR. You've got liquid level switches in each of the liquid knockouts. You've got low suction pressure alarms on each of the inlets and high discharge pressure alarms on each of the discharges. and an opportunity for temperature switches or RTDs or thermocouples on each of the heat exchangers. Lots of possibilities there just on a single compressor. So safety is a really big application for SOR. If someone closes the valve, they can deadhead a pump and exceed the case pressure on a stage or exceed the maximum discharge pressure on the pipeline. And additionally, seal pots are really a great application for us. And on all pumps of any significant size, customers use mechanical seals to seal around a rotating shaft. And as those seals wear, they can begin to leak. So some seals use the cooling fluid, and leakage into this fluid defeats the purpose of the cooler. So this is an ideal application for SOR for pressure and level and temperature switches. API regulates the design of seal pots, and they can require pressure and temperature switches for those pots. Various API plans require different instrumentation, but a lot of most of them will include a level switch, which you see here, and a pressure switch or pressure transmitter up here. If you're not familiar with a mechanical seal, you have a flushing fluid, which is pumped down this line and into the space between the seals on the mechanical seal. It's usually pumped at a pressure that is just below the system pressure that the pump is operating at. This minimizes the stress across the mechanical seal. It helps to lubricate it, cool it, and keep it clean. And then that cooling fluid is returned back to the pot where it's cooled and recirculated back to the seal. If the mechanical seals begin to fail, then process fluid from here will migrate into this area, come back with the cooling fluids, and begin to raise the level in the reservoir. The seal pot level switch will sense that level rise, give us an alarm, or it'll sense a rise in pressure if that's if there's a pressure involved with this, and gives the pressure alarm. So it's a good way for a customer to see that their mechanical seals are failing and replace the seal before you have a catastrophic failure of the seals and loss of pumping ability. So a lot of plants prefer to use SOR here because we are so rugged and reliable. When these pots come in with competitors' products on them, they'll replace them with SOR. Here's an example of some 50-year-old pressure switches which are used to monitor various stages on a gas compressor in Independence, Kansas. If you look at the lids on these older models, you can see they still have static O-ring cast into the lid the way we did 50 years ago compared to a newer switch, which is mounted there. If we look at the picture of the compressor, we can see there's some old pressure switches mounted directly on the compressor, as well as some old level switches out here. We make a very reliable switch. So if loss of pressure detection is an area where we excel, can you think of other applications where we have an important need to sense low pressure? Well, one, of course, is combustion protection. If you look at this P&ID for a combustion diagram, you can see that if you've got here fuel gas coming in from a knockout pot, it can in past the flow transmitter and a flow switch alarm, go into a flow control valve, also through a pressure regulator, which feeds back to the control valve and come out to go on to combustion. There's a pressure switch to give us an alarm for loss of fuel gas pressure, which feeds directly into the heater safeguard system. And you can see in that system, we've got some other pressure indicators and pressure alarms, as well as probably some temperature alarms. So fuel gas burner assemblies are required to have mechanical pressure sensors to detect when fuel gas pressures drop too low to support combustion. Also, on almost every burner of any size, you have to prove that an exhaust fan has run and purged the burner before you attempt to light it or relight it if you have a flame out on the burner. And for a lot of the large power burners, you need to prove that a forced draft or your induced draft fans are still pushing or pulling air into the firebox to support combustion. So process heaters and furnaces and boilers and any other combustion process is always a potential area for a sale. A lot of these areas physically shake from the motors and the pumps and the fans and the actual energy of the combustion. So gauges, cheap devices and forced motion devices often fail and are candidates for upgrades. You can see here's a typical arrangement where you've got a flow control valve, pressure regulator, the SOR switch for loss of pressure sensing, and a pressure indicator to show you what your your gas pressures are. Also, how do you know when it's safe to take the radiator cap off your car or to open your pressure cooker? Is it when you don't see any more steam? Not really. It'd be a lot safer to have a pressure switch so that you can know for sure that the pressure is gone. Ask Colonel Sanders, who pressure cooks their chicken, or dye vat operators or impregnator system operators. Opening a pressurized vat too soon is really dangerous, especially if it's a big one. So you've got a big lid where you've got a lot of area for that pressure to operate. If you open that lid before the pressure is gone, it can cause the fluids inside the vessel to boil again and flash out hot vaporized liquids at you and cause serious potential damage to people and property. So do you want to rely on a $5 pressure switch or a pressure gauge or an industrial pressure switch? To me, the choice is obvious. So almost every industrial operation needs to measure or monitor pressure for process control, and more often for safety concerns. If they have a smokestack, they probably need our products. Pipelines, refineries, power plants, pulp and paper facilities, water and wastewater facilities, plant floor manufacturing, food, chemical, oil and gas producers, research and development, automotive, foundries, minerals, and waste disposal operations, all are targets for us. And engineering and design firms often need our help to select the best products for their clients. Our part numbers can be kind of daunting at times, but it's because we have the ability to configure a switch to exactly meet the requirements they need for their application. So we can be of a huge benefit to designers by knowing our product and helping them choose what they need. Temperature switches were developed using a field system attached to a pressure switch. Our designs are rugged. They carry a lot of the same options that our pressure switches do, and they're made in a lot of the same configurations. They're less universally used, and that market's really competitive. So I usually sold 1 or 2 or 3 pieces as an add-on to a larger order for pressure switches. We sold them on compressors to sense high interstage temperatures, high bearing race temperatures, on lube oil systems for high temperature alarms and shutdowns, and on heat exchangers for high discharge temperature alarms or shutdowns. We can offer special fills and special bulb diameters for different installation needs. Our bulbs can handle high pressures. We need to remember that sensing ambient temperatures can be difficult, and we need to watch out for how customers install these things. Here's an example where a customer installed a temperature switch at a 90-degree angle into a small line instead of using a T at the end of the line to insert the bulb into the line for best operation. So we can guide our customers in applications as well as in selections. But let's talk about mechanical level. In the 1980s, SOR acquired MSW, which was magnetic sensing waves, out of Houston, Texas. The MSW design was a ruggedized copy of the Magnetrol design, and almost all their parts are interchangeable with Magnetrol, who was the market leader at that time. SOR asked my advice about the acquisition, and luckily they ignored my advice, which was to forget about the sale. As time came to prove, mechanical level sales eventually grew to overshadow all of my other SOR product sales and accounted for about 70% of my total SOR sales. So if you've known me for very long, you've probably heard me say that for a lot of my products, title never really seems to transfer with the sale. Years after I sell someone a product, I can get a phone call and someone will say, your transmitter doesn't work. And even though you've got that desire to say, well, I thought maybe by now it was your transmitter, we'd often end up helping resolve issues on years old products. But when we sold an SOR mechanical level switch, we almost never heard from them again. They're wonderful. So fortunately for us, the product is rock solid, and the main competition, Magnetrol, chose to focus on new electronic devices. So we're able to slowly and continuously chip away at their market share. And as recently as a few years ago, we continued to convert major end users like Magellan Pipeline from Magnetrol to SOR. If you look at this document, which was issued in 2017, it says, Due to continuing issues with magnetrol delivery of devices, they've been dropped from the 2017 Instrumentation and Control Standards. Static O-ring, SOR, has a line of switches that will directly replace the magnetrol switches. So this document was the end result of about 2 or 3 years of focused product demonstrations, lunches, and meetings with the engineering and purchasing groups to get us into their system to replace magnetrol. So the monthly booking reports we get show how this product continues to grow for us. Here's my report, our report from November of 17. And if you look at the level component of this, in November we sold $85,000 worth of level switches against a target of $34,000. That put us 246% to plan for that month. We had $700,000 worth of level switches year to date against a target of $404,000. And that put us 171% to plan. And clearly contributed to us to being well over target for all of the SOR products. They are really fabulous products. So let's take a look at this gem in the product line. We do flange chambers with floats or displacers, seal welded chambers with floats or displacers. We do top mounted displacers in single, dual, or triple displacer styles, as well as top mounted floats, side mounted floats, low cost 1500 series floats with options like manual check, using reed switches, and then the heavier duty model is using micro switches where you need more contact capability. All of our switches carry a 5-year warranty and are available with many approvals that keep us appropriate for applications everywhere. So these guys are like dinosaurs in the technology race. You're probably saying, well, who buys them? Where's the beef? Well, the oil and gas industry loves these things, especially gas plants, where they're commonly used and often requested by end users when OEMs are building new equipment. And the power industry also uses a bunch of them on boiler drums for safeties and shutdowns. So let's talk about applications. Here's a cryogas plant. You can see out in the middle of nowhere, but in it are applications everywhere. We've got fractionation towers, distillation columns. You've got some compressors with lube sumps on them, contactors and separators, fin fan coolers, below grade sumps. There are applications everywhere in these things, and because power is often not reliable, mechanical level products make a great choice for here. Always a good safety backup. Here's a typical specification sheet explaining, where the set points are, the connections, the pressures and temperatures and specific gravities. And you can look at the part number for the switch, which is lengthy, but it's because we can spell out every component we need to be appropriate for the application that's being used for. So here's a typical order. When the oil and gas industry is going strong, we could quote and land 3 or 4 orders a month like this. Magnetrol took several weeks to quote these things, and their delivery was 2 or 3 times the length of SOR's delivery. So the applications are for a high or low level on suction inlets for compressor protection, high and low level on cryogenic separators and on scrubbers to take liquids out of the gases, high and low level on compressor lube sumps and on below grade drainage sumps, along with sump level control, high level on storage tanks and interface level on contactors and heater treaters and glycol separators, dump controls on separators and rear levels. If you look at this order, you can see that some lines, this line had 6 items at $1,400 a piece. The price is always in the range of $1,300 to $2,500. And the discounts are 5%, very reasonable discounts for large orders. So this is page 1 of a multi-page order. Really, really great opportunities for us. So also, if you have OEMs or engineering firms who are involved in the oil and gas production areas, these products really deserve special attention from you. You can use the tips and reminders we've talked about to develop product knowledge and application knowledge, and then begin a program of identifying magnetrol users and converting them to SOR. With every conversion success, the next one becomes easier and because you and your customers know the products better, and industry acceptance grows in an industry that really doesn't like to do change, they resist change, you embed yourself. So once you win a customer, it's extremely hard to lose them. And as long as you're responsive with quotes and deliveries and reasonable prices, you're going to keep that customer. You can see here's an order for 83 of these units at a pretty good price. Here are some documents from the Energy Information Administration looking at the 2020 outlook for oil and gas. You can see that because of the current state of the industry and COVID, the outlook for oil consumption has gone flat, maybe with a tiny drop off, but for natural gas products, it's still got a slight increase for it. And our consumption may drop a little bit, but the production of liquefied natural gas products and natural gas products will continue to rise. So because there's so much production, there's still a demand to build processing facilities and transportation facilities. So pipelines and processing plants still will be good business for us in the future. The power industry is another mainstay for SOR mechanical switches. Here's a graphic from Magnetrol that shows where we can be used. You can read that: fuel oil storage, condensate storage, atmospheric sumps, de-aerators, condensate drip legs and drains and steam drums and hot wells on the condenser, feed water heaters and blowdown tanks, lube oil tanks and systems, cooling tower basins, and then the environmental areas with the ammonia and caustics and acid storages. You know, I love power. You remember the tool time with Tim and Binford Tools? It's great. Power is wonderful. So here's a photo of a level switch on a superheated steam drum, or possibly a de-aerator operating about 1,000 degrees. You can see the fins on the extension helping to drop that temperature, and then the extension itself getting up so we keep the temperature at the switching up below 800 degrees. But we have the ability to handle 1,000 degree or hotter applications as long as we can keep the temperatures below 800. So when I'm doing a proposal, or was doing a proposal, I'm retired now, for power plants, I like to point out that we are technically really a better product than the Magnetrol products, which older, sometimes less aware engineering companies would specify. That our standard warranty for these switches is 5 years, well beyond the startup requirements and delivery requirements for the project. That our high temperature switches are designed to operate at temperatures up to 1,000 degrees. That we build using ASME and ANSI B31.1 and .3 standard construction with ASTM grade materials and in code welding, and also it's important to point out that as power companies begin to cut back on the number of crews they use to maintain these plants, they start to circulate crews from plant to plant to do startups and turnarounds. And if we can convince them to use the same product in each of the sister plants, it makes those turnarounds and startups go faster and easier for them. So it's important for me to remind them that in these sister plants, they are already using SOR, and it makes good sense to continue to use SOR in these future plants or the upgrade plants. Then another thing I'd like to point out is that after the construction, sometimes the spares end up going to the contractors, and if you're a rep, you need to get right in there and keep that from happening. Engineering companies like Black & Veatch and Zachary and TIC and a lot of others have a long history of familiarity with SOR in the power industry. So even if you don't have the engineering firms in your territory, you can go after the spares business, which often goes to the original construction company instead of the local rep, and it can be very profitable. So you need to call on your I&E groups in the power plants, as well as the stores area and the purchasing groups, to make sure that business is funneled to you and not to a construction company at some remote location. Also, SOR makes great RTDs and thermocouples. One of the applications I had a lot of success with was tube skin thermocouples. In a process heater, a lot of times the the tubes will move 6, 8, 12 inches from hot to cold operation. So in order to keep the thermocouple measuring at the right point, it's common practice to weld the sheath to the tube skin at one point. So as the tube moves, the thermocouple moves with it. But that means that when the thermocouple fails, which they often do under these difficult applications, the customer used to have to go back into the heater, shut down, go inside and grind off that weld and replace the assembly. So with the 1510 replaceable tube skin thermocouple arrangement that SOR makes, we make a model that you can pull that thermocouple out of that sheath, slide the new one in, and continue to operate without having to go in and grind off the welds and replace the thermocouple. So a final word, we need to remember to trust our products. I once had a senior engineer at Phillips 66 ask me if I would trust my life to a pressure switch. And I told him if it was an SOR switch and it's properly applied, with the background I've had with them, I certainly would. And a lot of people do trust their lives to them. I can recall that once I was at a plant in Oklahoma City where they converted animal fats to hydrogenated food products. I'd sold them some SOR flush diaphragm models for these applications, and they claimed that they had one that didn't work. So I went over and I checked it, and I checked the over travel and told them I couldn't find anything wrong with the switch. The only way I could check it further was to take it off, and I wasn't going to do that because it was indicating that it was pressurized over the set point, and it was on a molten fat application. So the guy I was working with called me a sissy and started to unscrew it against my recommendations. So luckily, I convinced him to wrap it in a rag before he took it off. So when he did take it off and it blew off the line, he only got minor burns. But the last time I saw him, he was running through the control room, cursing at the operators on his way to go get medical treatment. So our products really do fulfill important functions. And if we do our jobs right, we're helping protect people and property and processes. You know, I always tried to be the best and most professional salesperson I could be. And I think that if we help our customers achieve a better life using our products, they will habitually utilize us as their partners in business. So thanks for your time and attention for this presentation. I hope you've heard something that might be of some use in your sales efforts. If I can ever be of any assistance, please call or text me or contact Michelle or SOR, and I'd be glad to help. Thank you and goodbye.